And it's time for Making Connections, where we meet people right here in our community who make up the fabric of Korean society and get to hear their stories. Of course, from time to time, we also get to sit down with guests who are visiting to share about their life, work, and how they're connected to Korea. This week, we are excited to be joined by TEO Young, also known as Young TEO here in Korea. He is a well-known lifestyle and interior designer. For those of you who know that space, you probably already know him very well. He's worked in places like Amsterdam, Berlin, and Los Angeles, designing luxury boutique hotels and homes. And after his move back to Korea, he founded Taeyoung Studio, and he's worked on some amazing projects right here in Korea that we are going to unpack. Welcome, Taeo.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting
Thank
me.
you for coming. It's really a pleasure to have you. So let's maybe for those of us who are not as familiar, uh, introduce you a little bit. You are a well known lifestyle and interior designer in Korea. You have your own style, which we will talk about in a little bit. You've spent a lot of time studying abroad as well and working. And in fact, you did work under Marcel Wanders, one of the top interior designs of the world. So, start us off. How did you get involved in this field of work to begin with? What was your inspiration?
Well, for me, I think it became very naturally. Space has always been the most efficient tool for me to express myself.
Hmm.
Even at a very early age, I was always drawing furniture in future homes
Okay.
when I was little, and I would spend so much time rearranging furniture in home
Mm.
with my parents. So I think I knew from an early age that I would do something creative and space related for a living.
Okay. And you had a wonderful uh, education and work experience abroad. And many may wonder what brought you to back to Korea back in 2009, which is when you opened your own studio with your namesake.
Well, even though I was working at the one of the most influential design studio at that time, I missed home a lot.
Mm.
Like going to school in the States and working in Europe. I mean, it was a great experience, but I guess my instinct was telling me that I should come back to Korea. And I'm very glad that I did.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, right now we do see a lot of Korean influences in culture around the world as well. But I don't know what the scene was like in 2009 when you did decide to make that big leap back to Korea. Was Hallyu a presence where you were in Europe and
Well,
etc.?
unfortunately, Hallyu wasn't happening at the moment,
Uh-huh.
but I can definitely feel the impact of Hallyu even in the design world at the moment, and I'm actually enjoying every moment of it. People that I meet overseas, that I work with, they're very much interested in Korea, and they want to know about what's going on in Seoul, what's the contemporary art scene and design scene in Korea.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great opportunity for us
Hmm.
and a great timing for us to show what we have.
So let's jump to that because you are well known for your aesthetics in terms of merging the Korean aesthetic to a more modern
Hmm.
context as well. Um, and of course, many countries have their distinct design aesthetics, whether it's Scandinavian, Dutch, or German, Zen. How would you describe, in your view, the Korean aesthetic?
It's actually a very hard question, but a very interesting one at the same time because I'm still trying to figure out myself
Mm.
what are the key components and what could be some sort of a model figure for us. I mean, there are so many great values that we already have, such as pure formality. We have this playfulness, spontaneous act of creating something, and naturalistic simplicity. And we also have unadorned, beautiful shapes that comes from nature.
Mm, yes.
So there's so many to talk about, and
Yeah.
there's so many to discover. But I think it all comes down to a subtle balance on life and how we create harmony with nature and human lifestyle.
Okay. On that note, then, I mentioned at the top of the show just kind of this um, new trend, I guess. I mean,
Hmm.
summer typically is not a busy time for people to be doing interior decorating projects or renovation projects, perhaps because it's hot and it's summery,
Yes.
right? But this year, a lot of these furniture or renovation companies or Ace Hardware that sells the tools that you need to fix up your home um, are seeing skyrocketing sales. And I guess it's because, in part, of
Yes.
the COVID-19
Hmm.
pandemic, right? People are spending a lot more time at home and perhaps realizing the value
Hmm.
of making their space not only one where they come in and slug in and sleep and get up and go to work the
That's
next day,
totally
but a
true.
place where they can really find peace and harmony. So, could you give us some tips perhaps on how to approach maybe a home decorating project like that?
Well, I think it's really important to understand your lifestyle first.
Mm,
It's not about mimicking other self and just trying to copy something from a beautiful interior design magazine, but you really have to know what you like and what you enjoy and what your lifestyles are and even your life schedules are.
mm,
And make the house as a very efficient tool to make your life go on to a better state.
okay.
So I never give out just aesthetical tips because sometimes that could be um, a wrong way to approach interior design. It's
Uh-huh.
not just creating a beautiful space. It's not only creating a pretty things,
Right.
but it's really about truly understanding who you are. And if you create a space that helps your life to go on to a better state, I think that's a good interior design.
Okay, great advice there. So, practically speaking, then, I mean, as you said, balance is important. Knowing
Hmm.
how you live is important.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes we do collect a lot of things, right? To kind of, I guess, kind of mindlessly buy things sometimes. And in
Hmm.
Korea, when you buy things, you get samples, so everything just kind of collects. So, how important is, I guess, taking a moment to just taking a inventory of what you have and just
Hmm.
cleaning even?
Very important, I think, I believe. I mean, you leave traces all the time, and especially buying something for your home is sort of like creating a poetry of and telling people who you are.
Oh, I like that.
So these small objects not only become your possessions, but it really talks about you and it really talks about who you are.
Mm,
So I think you really need to think deeply before purchasing something and putting in your personal space.
right.
Yes.
I like that a lot. So, if I can reiterate what you just said, the things that you buy and the things that you bring into your house is like writing poetry about
Yes,
yourself and the lifestyle that
exactly.
you
It's
live.
kind of like creating a history for yourself. A lot of the collectors that I know, they come up with contents through your possessions and your collections. So I think you have to have a good meaning, good intentions for yourself and for the society, and even to the environmental causes. There's a lot of factors you need to think about in before collecting something
Mm-hmm.
or buying a little something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially in a situation that we're going through with all these disasters and environmental issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to be very cautious.
Mm. So, how do you approach buying things for yourself, Too?
Well, I tend to think a lot. I think about if it suits my lifestyle and how this item will portray me and how what kind of environmental effects it'll have, and finally how it's going to be used at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I not just buy things that is efficient but um, aesthetically pleasing, but at the same time that I'm gonna be using it for a long time.
Right, right. How many
Hmm.
uses am I going to get out of this item? Is it worth
Exactly.
bringing in? Because, yeah, I'm finding that having a lot of things actually costs you, maybe not
Hmm.
money,
Hmm.
but the time that you take to take care of it, to wipe it down, to, things like that.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm talking practically speaking. But you're a designer. Let's get back to the theme of design. I guess when people think Korean tradition or design, we think of the palaces that
Hmm.
dot the city center, the ornate painting on the vases and so forth. What is Korean design to Yang Teo?
For me, Korean design is a source and always an inspiration point where I come up with solutions.
Oh.
And I think design and Korean aesthetic has never been introduced properly. So I think there's a lot of things to dig up and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things to rediscover and a lot of things to showcase to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you said palaces and porcelains, but that's a very small portions of it. There's so much to it and so much to see.
Okay, so if you could point out maybe one or two things that people may not know about
Mhm.
Korean design, what would that be?
Well, I'm very much interested in the scholars of
The
Korea.
scholars.
We call it 선비 in
Okay.
Korea,
Uh-huh.
I'm very much focused on the lifestyle of how they lived, trying to get to the level of a very high status.
Right, which was a very simple lifestyle, am I
Yes, it
correct?
was very simple, but a very sophisticated one. And the rituals that they had and the beauty that they had, I'm very obsessed with them. So, zombie philosophy of zombies could be a starting point for
Mm-hmm.
people to have more interest in Korean culture.
And how would you describe that philosophy, if you
That's also a very hard question, but
would?
yes, but
There's a lot in there.
yes, there's a lot in there, but balance with nature and composing yourself to be a better person
Mm-hmm.
would be the easiest way to describe the zombie lifestyle.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about some of your projects, if we could. This year, you did a collaboration with the British hand painted wallpaper house, De Gournay. And I hope I didn't butcher that pronunciation. You added two designs to the brand's Korean collection. So,
Mhm.
for those of us who may not be familiar, could you tell us more about the brand before we get into your projects?
Yes, De Gournay is a luxury wall covering and fabric manufacturer brand based in London. It started in the 1920s, so it has a pretty
Ooh,
long history.
heritage.
Yes, and they have been producing beautiful hand painted wallpaper based on Eastern aesthetic.
Aesthetics.
Yes,
Okay.
and it became one of the leading manufacturers in the luxury wallpaper market.
Mm-hmm.
It's been used by the British royals and huge celebrities and artists.
And these are hand painted,
Yes, and
literally.
everything is hand painted.
Whew. Wow. So that, I mean, that's a lot of man hours to begin with. Any idea how much they cost?
It's actually a very pricey, expensive wallpaper, but of course it's hand painted, so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of manpower. But it's all about the research that they put in. They
Mm.
study. They just don't reenact or copy and mimic these old beautiful heritage that we have, but they do extensive research
Mm.
before creating something.
Then tell us about these two Korean designs that you added to their collection.
Well, I have chosen the royal painting and the folk painting.
Uh huh.
So we call it 궁중화 and we call it minhwa for
Okay.
the folk painting. And I've decided to do two categories of paintings because, first of all, I wanted this collaboration to be an introduction to Korean traditional painting.
Mm.
We don't even really know the categorization of Korean painting.
Right.
So so I wanted to just give a very
Introduce.
introduce and give out a very simple information about what we have.
Mm,
So one from the royal painting and one from the folk painting.
I see. And what
Yes.
has the response been so far?
The response has been great so far. Even though we might be familiar to these traditional paintings, but overseas it's not. People
Yeah.
haven't seen it before,
Mm-hmm.
so they approach it as a very contemporary, unfamiliar art form
Mm-hmm.
that they want to learn more about.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like your work as an international designer, Teo, is not only in the artistic realm, which is obviously a big part of it too, but in some ways as an ambassador of sorts of Korea's culture and heritage beyond what is already known, which is, as
Mhm,
you say, still very much a small part of what is available out there.
mhm.
So before we head out, then, could you give us a sense of what maybe some of your future projects are, what we can look forward uh, to have the Yangteo brand behind it?
Oh, yes. I'm always using design as a tool to further understand Korean aesthetic and talk about Korean heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not just trying to create something pretty and beautiful, but I want to send out a message that there's this potential and there's this great heritage that we can utilize in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope my design could inspire a lot of people and bring Korea aesthetic as a great brand in the future.
Okay, Teo, it's been a pleasure to have you on this show. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us a bit about your philosophy and your life.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that does bring us to the end of today's edition of Life Abroad. Before we go, let's get to our question of the day. What is this term used to describe the application of plants in an interior decoration? I'm not sure if Teo uses this as well. The hint was a combination word between plant and interior. 9593 writing in to say it's plantaria. Is that correct? 6692 plant trance. My wife is collecting tayugi, is a succulent plant. There's too many of them on the kitchen table, leaving not much space for cooking and eating. Oh, she's got a great love of greens. 9910 writing in to say plant terrier. Not too long ago on a TV program, golf player Park Se bought a bunch of plants and decorated her house. 9131 writing plant terrier. And that is correct, everyone. Plant terrier is the answer, a mashup of the words plant and interior to describe the popular trend of using plants to spruce up your space. Many cafes, shops, and department stores are all adopting this trend, as well as individuals who are increasingly investing and decorating their living quarters with, and it comes with the perk of providing nice air as well. All right, on that note, then, everyone, our show is produced by Christina Ho, writing by Jennifer Chang. I'm Eunice Kim, and we are going to leave you with the song 상주 아리랑 by 개화기 밴드 야사시. They were invited to Teo's exhibition titled 사랑방 그 안에 머무는 것들 last year. Anything you want to say about the song, Teo, before we go?
Yes, I loved and respect this band because they not only reenact Korean traditional folk songs, but they reinterpretate and we give contemporary energy to what we
Oh,
have.
awesome. Well, enjoy it, everyone. Uncoded with Uncod is coming up next, and we will see you again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. here on Life Abroad. Have a great day.